recording because we blanked out for a second there.
Yeah, no problem. We good?
Yeah, I think we're recording.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoyed the show when I was a kid. And I got to see the movie. My relationship with the show was a little bit different. Because when I was the age, when I was a kid and it was coming out. I was living overseas at the time.
Yeah.
So I could only really see episodes here and there. Usually, somebody had like a VHS or something. So I'd only really seen, maybe in total like a half of however many episodes, for however many seasons before the movie came out. And I did actually get to see the movie, and watch that when when I lived overseas. But like with a lot of American cartoons, like sometimes they would get brought over to where I was living, and then sometimes they just didn't make it. So I ended up watching a lot of TV when we would come back to the States, in the summertime to visit family. And one of those episodes one of those shows I would definitely watch was Transformers. It would take a while in those days for us to get media overseas. So whenever I would come back to the U.S., everything was way further along. And there's basically this gap between what we had access to and then what was currently running. So that was always that was always pretty interesting. I really enjoyed the cartoon, the original G1 cartoon, and everything through the movie. I had a few of the toys. When I was a kid, I don't know if I've got a hold of them anywhere in my house anymore, but
I've got a whole box of them, as you can see.
They were great toys.
You had an Astro Train and a Jetfire originally, as I recall.
Yeah, I had those, and I think I had some of the smaller ones. I had like some of the little tape guys.
Here's your boy Rodimus.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Rodimus.
As I recall, I believe one year I got you a really nice Jetfire.
You did, yeah. No, I've got that, and it's in the case down
I
here.
actually have a case full of my Transformers.
Isn't that this one, or am I thinking of someone else?
No, that is a Transformer. That is.
It definitely is. I just don't.
That
know
is a Decepticon.
Yeah, it's definitely a Decepticon.
Oh, it's a Decepticon Target Master, actually.
Oh, Target Master. Okay.
It is a Target Master. Yeah.
I've actually got I've got a book in Japanese called Transformers Generation, which shows all the Generation 1 toys.
Nice.
Both Japanese, European, and American releases.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
My wife can probably read it.
Right.
I should try that out because she can now read Japanese. She could probably read that for me. Excellent.
No, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. That would be very cool.
I mean, I still collect.
I think I had like a Headmaster. I had the tank one.
Yeah. Hardhead.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it was cool.
Hardhead. Some of the names were better than others. Am I right?
Yeah.
I had both the jump starters, Twin Twist and Top Spin. I had a Duocon.
Yeah.
I had a Duocon. I currently have I have the Japanese released Beast War 2 Optimus Prime, which is Leo Convoy, turns into a white lion. I have the car robots, which came out here as Robots in Disguise. Optimus Prime is a fire truck.
Oh, cool.
I have the Cybertron Optimus Prime.
Nice.
I have the Masterpiece Optimus Prime.
I think I've got the Headmaster Optimus Prime.
Power Master.
Oh, nice.
Okay. Oh yeah, it was the Power Master.
I had that.
Here's the bit that goes in the thing and the
Okay.
Power Master.
I let my girls play with these for a little while because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them.
Hey, that's a great use of your Transformers, man. Is let your children play with them.
Yeah.
And they love the Dinobots because of course they do. Because the Dinobots are fantastic.
They were the best ones.
They really were.
I've got I picked up Victorion, who is like a giant combiner made of like 6 female Autobots, who are like teal and red and gray. Pretty cool looking robot. It sits in my case, fully transformed in combined mode. I've got an
Mhm.
Ultra Magnus. I got RC. I got Smokescreen. I've got a bunch of shit that came out at Aldi's on discount, so I picked it up. So I pretty much have a Transformers case. I got Megatron in there, tank form. And it's just kind of interesting how the brand has endured for 30 years later.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, because that's the interesting part. Not that there was this half-hour commercial for toys, but for some reason it has survived. The branding wise, like the fact that they made all these movies about them in the 2000s, whatever their quality level was, the fact that they occurred is is worth mentioning. I
It
feel
is.
like.
It
No,
is.
for
It's
sure.
very worth mentioning. I mean, love it or hate it. And well, I'm
So
not gonna lie.
what's the appeal? Why do we care about this? What enabled it to survive? What's the
Archetypes.
hook?
I believe archetypes.
Okay,
You have Optimus Prime, the,
sure,
the heroic, lead from the front lines, self-sacrificing leader.
sure.
You have his various other members of his group. You've got Grimlock and his Dinobots,
Mm,
the rebellious, ass-kicking, hostile anti-heroes of the Autobots.
yes, yes, I'd say that's true.
You've got Ironhide, who is just like 20 miles north of sounding like Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah, sure.
You've got Jazz, voiced by of Hong Kong Phooey fame, Scatman Carruthers,
Okay,
who's your hip as fuck Porsche.
right. I got you.
You
I got
know,
you.
you got Blaster, who's your hip as fuck boombox.
Yeah.
Hound, a stranger in a strange land who loves this new strange land and finds it endlessly fascinating.
Okay.
You got
Okay.
you got Jetfire, the conflicted former Decepticon. Even though he's only Decepticon for like one episode.
Yeah.
And then on the
Yeah.
Decepticon side, you got Megatron, the overbearing, conniving, evil leader
Sure.
who, for some reason, tolerates the most rebellious, backstabbing, ambiguous motherfucker on the planet, Starscream.
Starscream is the worst. He's the worst to such a degree that it becomes admirable. You almost grow to enjoy the purity of his
Of his fuckery.
conniving, you know,
It's the scheming.
maliciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just purely malicious, and
No.
he's got that horrible like voice that just like
Yeah.
rings in your eardrums and is like he sounds like, from Dumb and Dumber. You want to hear the most annoying sound in the world? Ah, like that's
Yeah.
Starscream. He sounds like that, and yeah, I
And
think
he's
the characters are all,
unrepentant. He's very unrepentant.
yeah,
Like,
the character.
for instance, like you had an episode where the Triple Changers tried to rebel against Megatron, and they learned their lesson and never tried that shit again.
Sure.
Starscream never learns his lesson ever.
And never seems to really pay any consequence, except in the movie.
Yeah. In the movie, he finally gets what's coming to him, but
And never comes
then-
back, right?
No,
I
comes
don't
back
think
as a
he ever
ghost.
came.
Comes back as a
Oh.
ghost. Yeah, we'll get
How
into
does
that
that-
later.
Yeah, okay. So you're
Yeah.
gonna make the argument.
How does it?
Anyway, characters,
okay.
yes, strong, interesting, dynamic. There's
characters-
lots of
and
characters. They can spin lots of episodes. They can do sorts of interesting things with them. I'm gonna say that the real driver behind it was that the toys were really cool.
Yeah.
Yes, they were
And
dynamic in color. Their vehicle modes were really fucking cool. I mean, Optimus Prime was a semi truck, and in the '80s, what was fucking cooler than a semi truck? I mean, a
not
Lamborghini.
only that, but like the whole act of picking one up and turning it from one thing to the other, from a vehicle mode into a robot form, the whole act of that was like something to do with your fingers, and then you would do it and you would
It was
change it back and you
interactive.
would, it's interactive. It's interactive, and they were designed not to be impossible to break, but you had to work at them to break them. Like they were they weren't just like plastic crap, although some of them were plastic crap. The lesser ones were plastic crap, but they were mostly like,
Many
you
of them
know,
were
either
many of them were die cast.
yeah, die cast metal. So, you know, they had a certain durability. So you
Sure.
could take them outside, you could throw them in the dirt, and you know, you could clean them off, and they were
Yep.
good as new. I mean, the stickers would come off, and you'd lose the guns because you always lost the guns.
You did.
But you know, they were well designed. They were designed to last.
They
I
were.
would say.
They were.
Like I still have this box of them.
And like
40 years ago.
yeah, yeah, man, like it's fucking awesome.
I mean, I think their enduring popularity, yeah, it's kind of to build on what Andrew said. It's just you have characters that like literally change from one thing to another. Like, it's really compelling, right? You know, if you're following a story, you know, with consistent characters, you're probably going to have to wait until the second or third act for any of those characters to really truly change.
Mm-hmm.
But you sort of get like instant gratification with these robot characters that can instantly transform from one thing to another in the first episode right off the bat. You know, there you go.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that
like-
was the hook. When we were like little boys and they were marketing this to us, it's like it turns from a car into a robot and back again. Tell me more. I want more.
Yeah.
I got a whole box of them.
And by and large, it's self-contained. You don't have to take it apart and put it back together for it to be a different thing. You just twist and turn and swivel.
No tools required, and each one was different.
Yep.
There were a couple that were the same, like, you know, Ratchet and Ironhide and Blue Streak and Jazz. They were all basically different.
Well,
paint
Blue
jobs on
Streak
the
and
same
Prowl and Smokescreen, but yeah.
That's what I meant.
I got
But
you.
they were all basically the same, but they were mostly like each one was different, and you had fun figuring out how to get it from one form to the other. Then once you do it, it was like almost like a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Not
And
quite that.
then they came out. Then you had the Dinobots, which they weren't vehicles, but they were fucking robot dinosaurs with flamethrowers, missile launchers, laser swords, and
It's what we all wanted.
Yeah.
Robot
It's
dinosaur.
what we
What we
wanted.
all wanted. Just please give me the robot dinosaur. Like
they had to make them stupid because how else was Megatron ever going to have a hope against that shit? Dude, you turn into a handgun, and Grimlock just mopped the floor with your ass, and he's got an IQ of like Cookie Monster. Okay,
like
in fact,
he turns into a gun, and then someone else has to shoot him.
yeah,
Also,
It was the
Grimlock turns
that was
into
always the dumbest thing.
Grimlock turns into a fire-breathing
First-
Tyrannosaurus Rex. The fuck you gonna do about that? I mean, yeah, you'll beat him in a game of patty cakes, but that's about it, man.
Grimlock, they'll want to play a game of count to 5. You always win. Yeah, no.
No. Why you ask Grimlock help hold blanket? Grimlock can't hold blanket and dino form. Grimlock hands small and stumpy. Mer, mer.
Grimlock angry.
It's like, oh no,
Grimlock.
but I can count to 5 and he can't. Yeah, no. So
Me, Grimlock, step on you. Spush, you know.
Grimlock solve existential crisis with violence.
yeah.
Grimlock just pawn in big game of life. Energon grab for Mr. Grimlock. Energon grab for Mr. Grimlock. Man, I even had to invent the Energon gram, and they'd probably give that credit to someone else. Now I'm picturing Jazz in that situation. It's hilarious.
Yep. Stop the analogy. Stop the analogy. Yeah. Okay. So there were a lot of these half-hour commercials for toys. They
Yeah.
were all marketed to us, and this appears to have been the one in which, going back to something that we say a lot, they put the most work into the pie.
Yeah.
They put the most work into the pie because it's like, you remember He-Man? That was kind of like really, really, really dumb.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was dumb.
Well, and we
It was
talked
like
about, we
it was
talked about this before.
Conan.
It was originally supposed to be a Conan cartoon, but they couldn't
Yeah.
get the rights, so they had to change
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah,
Conan, not really a kid's cartoon. Let's be honest.
It's not.
No, no, it's not. And they probably did the right thing, but like there was nothing to that. Despite all these monstrous figures they were creating, like they were basically all the same mold. It was like
Yeah.
it was like a Funko Pop with a spring action punch in it.
Yep.
Really,
Yep.
and there's nothing
Yeah.
to it, you know. And the cartoon was always like really basic and kind of comical.
Yeah.
I remember my mom pointing out, like, if somebody looked like that, he wouldn't be able to run fast at all. And I was like,
That's why he's got the cat.
you're right, Mom.
That's why he's got Battle Cat to get around.
He looks ridiculous.
Yep.
And there was no depth to it. Or
And Skeletor looks like he should be on the cover of a Dio album. I mean, which, you know.
We don't know that he's not. We don't know that he's not. There might be an unreleased Dio album somewhere with Skeletor on the cover.
Holy diver.
Neon Knights. And you know, a lot of these things, like even G.I. Joe, which, you know, had this enormous pedigree.
Yeah.
They kind of felt like, you know, kind of grandfathered in, and they didn't really like. They were just, you know, making something infinitely reproducible. But at this moment, there was like, for this, somebody actually had an idea, and it hit across all the platforms that it was working on, because whoever was involved with it knew just enough to make them interesting, and to hit right at the market, which was us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And
well,
it was unique.
No, for sure. And like one of the things that I think, you know, that was happening in the 80s was, you know, we were sort of the first generation that was marketed to from, like, you know, basically cradle to grave, right?
Right.
And I think that, you know, there was a lot of sort of marketing techniques that were further refined, you know, since then, that were basically being pioneered with these children's shows and toy lines. You know, so it was these, you know, media companies and toy makers, and of course, you know, there were a bunch of fast food, you know, restaurants as well. You know, the McDonald's Happy Meal, for example. You know, all of these things.
Sure.
And I mean,
those meals never made me that happy.
But I mean, what I'm saying is, obviously, people spent a bunch of money on this marketing, because it's, you know, marketing isn't cheap. So, you know, some of this was
not,
you know, was definitely sort of the R&D phase of what would come, you know, which they've since built on for, you know, for decades since, essentially.
Yeah, but like, I don't really feel there aren't very many brands. G.I. Joe notwithstanding, but I mean, G.I. Joe is going to have some pretty compelling characters because its comic book and largely characterizations were written by a Vietnam vet.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that the iteration of G.I. Joe that we're talking about is specifically what Larry Hama did, what he created with, you know, an already existing property. And GI Joe was originally supposed to be a like a Nick Fury sort of Agents of Shield
Agents of Shield thing,
spinoff.
but yeah.
But you know, that's not how it went, and they basically went to every other writer at Marvel at the time, and then they ended with Larry Hama and were like, "Hey, do you want to take a stab at this book?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And that was how we got what we think of now as GI Joe. Even though, as you said,
And
the whole thing kind of preceded Hama's run on the comics and the TV show and all of that stuff.
And to be honest, GI Joe was generally better written than Transformers was in the comics.
There were
The
some really
Transformer
good, well-written GI Joe comics in the '80s. I remember
there
them,
were.
and they were pretty
Remember,
like they were dark
dudes
and
died. Yeah,
yeah, they were dark and they were compelling,
Mm-hmm.
and they
and one of
really
the
was
best.
trying to say something about like the legacy of things. It was a
And
commentary on the times without being heavy-handed about it.
Sure.
one of the best issues ever written of GI Joe, which everyone knows about, is a silent issue. Not a word of dialogue. Not a
Mm-hmm.
single word of dialogue, which is simply Snake Eyes breaking into the Cobra base to retrieve Scarlet, him fighting with Storm Shadow, and then the reveal at the ending that him and Storm Shadow have the exact same tattoo, which is like one of the tetragrams from the I Ching. I can't remember
The
what it was.
63rd trigram.
Yes, the 63rd trigram of the I Ching. Which, if I
Mm-hmm.
had my I Ching book, I could tell you what it was right now, but that's neither here nor there. Which is funny because the I Ching is Chinese, not Japanese, but whatever.
And they both
Close enough.
belong. They both belong to the what is it? Arashikage clan, which is a
Yep.
fictitious ninja clan that
I
Hama
believe
actually made up for the comic.
I believe
Yeah.
Arashikage actually translates as Storm Shadow.
It might.
I know Kage's Shadow. My wife could tell me, but I'm not going to go. I'm not going to take off my headphones, go down, ask her, and then run back up. So,
She'll let you know later when she hears the
yeah,
episode.
gentle listeners, I'm sorry. On this one, you're just going to have to either look it the fuck up, and it's not like any of you rely upon us for factual information anyway. And if you are, the fuck is wrong with you? Okay, two of the people on this podcast are educators, but I am not an educator. I am just an opinionated loudmouth that reads a lot from sources
Yeah.
that may or may not be reliable.
Here we go.
That's-
The 63rd trigram. Or I'm sorry, hexagram. Hexagram 63 is named already fording. Other variations include after completion and already completed or already done.
Yes.
So the inner, which is the lower trigram, is radiance, fire, and the outer is water. So it's the joining of opposites. And there are only 64 trigrams, so it's also the penultimate trigram in the I Ching.
Yes.
Okay.
See, kids, you get culture from this podcast. Not much.
You get culture. So yeah, so when we think back to some of these other franchises, they seemed very weak tea, and pretty forgettable. Like when the GoBots stopped being on, nobody really cared.
No.
When we watched the Masters of the Universe movie by Canon Films,
It's so
That was
bad.
hilarious.
So
it's
bad.
hilarious. It's so bad. It's wonderful, and we don't really care. They have rebooted He-Man a couple of times, but they've never quite hit with it because it's pretty generic and there's not a whole lot you can do with it. But for some reason, Transformers had a hook
And still
that
gets rebooted to this day.
and still gets rebooted to this day and made a very successful rebooted film franchise in the 2005 that people don't like them, but they made money. And And
I
actually, a lot of
mean,
people do like them because they keep making them.
I mean,
yeah, I mean, look,
people keep going to those movies. Like they're not great, but like they still make enough money to justify making more of them, right?
look, they've been able to re-release the original 1980 whatever cartoon movie twice into
Yeah,
theaters, limited
yeah.
runs, and I've been to one of them, um, and I enjoyed it. Hell, man, I found out that my lovely wife actually loves that movie. We actually watched it as a date night here on my DVD player. We watched Transformers because I found out she liked it. I'm like, I didn't know you liked Transformers. Um,
Yeah,
It's a
like
great movie.
there's something to it. Like
yeah,
it's that thing like that I just mentioned. Like they cared about the pie.
Absolutely.
They cared about the pie, even though the movie was a cynical move to like shred the original toy line to sell us more toys. Even though that's 100% the case, they still somehow managed to make something approaching art out of it. That if you
they
watch it again as
moved.
a grown up, there's something there. I mean, Orson Welles is voicing the monster in that.
Yeah.
There,
They moved to
Classic
build
role.
a greater they moved to build a greater mythology around it. Like they moved to build an origin that was like, okay, it wasn't that people built these things and then they rebelled and then they were on their own. It's that in Simon Furman's and they've since adopted this as official canon, the Transformers are born of a god
Mm.
made flesh or made circuit. The
Oh, there's the
Transformers are born
maker.
from the,
Right, right.
the
yeah.
Primus, are born of Primus, who was once an astral entity from the beginning of time, who was locked in eternal struggle with his brother and chaos entity god Unicron, and tricked Unicron into taking physical form by taking physical form himself, and then became a mechanical entity, and then from his life force birthed the Transformers.
This sounds like a D&D world, honestly. Like this, what you're reading there sounds a bit like something like Gygax would have come up with in one of his weirder moments.
Gygax
That,
wasn't
that,
that creative, dude. If he didn't have
the
Tolkien, Gygax ripped the fuck off of Tolkien, dude. I mean, credits due,
uh,
and
I
probably
mean,
ripped off Lieber as well. If you want to be
Mm.
perfectly honest, definitely
look, Tolkien would have been the first to admit that he was also ripping off people.
Oh
If
yeah.
we're being honest,
yeah,
yeah.
but he'd at least admit it.
He didn't invent high fantasy.
No.
He was just the best at it.
By the way, I believe speaking of high fantasy in one of our previous episodes that I was not on, Brust is going to be releasing another book soon.
Oh, sweet.
Ooh,
Also, he's also on
I've lost,
Facebook.
I've
He's
lost
also
the
on
thread
Facebook, man. You can totally friggin' friend him on Facebook. Like he's just like I got a bunch of friends that are mutual friends with him, and I'm like,
That's-
is that Stephen Brust? He mentions I'm like, it's that Stephen Brust. Fuck
Yeah,
yeah,
I've
man.
seen pictures of him, and I'm pretty sure there were at least a few Balticons I went to back in the day where he was there. So I was like, that
Yeah,
looks familiar. So
yeah.
wouldn't surprise
and
me.
that's pretty.
But
cool.
writing a compelling mythology, behind a world really goes a long way to its lasting and speaking to people.
Yeah,
And they put it in the cartoon, which is part of what
Yeah.
I think helped. It fleshed out the world. And by comparison, a lot of these other, I think what we're saying is like content is king. The Transformers universe had a lot more depth to it than say He-Man or GI Joe or any of these other
Mask.
Mask, any of these other like
I mean, did you ever
80s
for a minute ask
children's shows
yourself
we watched.
as a kid, where did Skeletor come from? I mean, a Dio album. That's as far as I ever got.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's
So,
what we're
no,
saying. It's like this is all something that's rehashed. And
I
doesn't really have
mean,
any depth to it.
to quote an old acquaintance of me and Pods, Skeletor, Emperor of Destruction. The only thing he ever destroyed was Beastman's ego.
Yeah, it's true.
I think you're right. Even though, Mike, I think you're right that there was some depth to the content. Even though a lot of the episodes became very formulaic.
Sure. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Well,
There
okay,
was
so
not.
like, if you take a look at GI Joe, or specifically Thundercats, while their characters had some flaws, typically in Thundercats, it was always Lion-O was fucking up. It was always Lion-O fucking up.
The
And
Thundercats were
He-Man,
so
and
boring.
He-Man, it was always Orko fucking up. In Transformers, Optimus Prime fucked up. Ratchet fucked up. Grimlock fucked up. Like, the good guys oftentimes made mistakes. They had flaws. They fucked up. The Decepticons fucked up. And sometimes the Decepticons that looked like they was going to win just through their sheer treachery.
Is that a
And
case that they made so many characters that they felt free to write them in interesting ways, like so that we have so many Autobots that you can write an episode where Optimus Prime is makes an error because there will be other Autobots there to correct him and fix the flaw, and they'll
yeah,
all learn and hug it out, and you can have that complexity if you've got enough characters. Whereas
well,
there's
all
6 Thundercats.
Yeah, there's not a huge cast in that show.
and
Yeah,
GI Joe. Well, I mean, they generally they didn't have a lot of fuck ups. I mean, even though they had a dude in a goddamn Hawaiian shirt, which is the greatest Parisian uniform protocol I've ever heard of.
Well,
But
so one of the things I'll say about G.I. Joe specifically is the only thing that people really remember or really talk about now or make any reference to really are like the old Marvel comics. And,
uh-huh.
in terms of like, because I think IDW has the rights for it and still writes, still has like ongoing series now. And that's where you got all of the depth. That's where you got all of the lore. But it also wasn't a kids show. As we talked about, characters went on missions and they died. um,
Yeah,
so it was
there
a
was
little,
some disconnect between the comics and the show.
for sure. So I
oh
think
yeah,
so I think it's, I think you can make the case that like the only reason people still sort of really know about it, or it's even really a brand, has everything to do with the comics. With Transformers, you had that depth and that backstory and the lore and everything pretty much in every facet.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
was all coordinated. What was in the toy was most of the time what you saw on the cartoon show and what appeared in the comics. And there'd be some variation, like the comics are usually a little more complex. But, you're not going to see anything wildly divergent. When something showed up in the comics, it's eventually going to show up in the cartoons and in the toy line. It was
yep.
I
coordinated.
mean, whenever things would happen, yeah, it really was. Whenever things would happen in the show, that were like when they introduced the Constructicons. Holy fuck! We have Decepticons now have just Voltron together into a big ass Decepticon. The fuck are the
Yeah.
Autobots going to do about that? Well, the Autobots' answer to that was to bring out Omega Supreme, who don't need to combine. He's just really fucking big, and he will bust some ass on his own. Um,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
then you came out with the Aerial Bots, who were the Autobots' first combiner team, and the Decepticon, and they're like, oh, look, now we have flying Autobots. Well, the Decepticons like, now we have car Decepticon. Okay, maybe we didn't think that through too well, but
I think that rule that the Autobots were always cars and the Decepticons were always planes were just something they kind of like decided for differentiation early on without making it pure lore, and then
Yeah.
they're like,
then they
okay,
can
so
violate it freely.
and okay, so then why do you have a cassette deck and tapes and a camera? Look, we don't talk
And
about
a
that.
gun.
Yeah.
A
And a
gun.
gun.
He's a robot with a gun who turns into a gun that somebody else has to. I've said that already. At least Galvatron was a cannon.
Whereas Shockwave turns into a gun, but no one fires him. He fires himself.
Right.
And he's like a giant gun too.
One thing that I thought was interesting too for the Transformers was one of the things that undergirds pretty much all of their conflicts isn't just the fact that it's factional. So you have sort of two opposing sides or whatever on the other on either side of like a war.
Very Cold War. Very Cold
When,
War.
but when they get to Earth, like they have to constantly search for sources of energon. Like there's a resource war
Yes.
that's always happening because they're like, hey, if we don't get enough, we're gonna shut down. Like it's basically like we're gonna die. Like it's basically having to go find enough food to eat to live, and that was a plot focus in a lot of episodes. So I mean, I don't know. There was just, we're talking about the depth of the lore and the complexity, but like there was also this day to day sort of struggle that they could never really get around. It's you got to
I
put gas
mean,
in the car.
energy crisis is a real thing. I mean, 79, we had the gas crisis,
Right, and this
Yeah.
this cartoon was airing like while that was still pretty fresh in the minds of of parents certainly, and I mean if you had some slightly older kids watching, they'd be like, "Huh, this looks familiar,"
Yeah. And there was always like the great ethical dilemma about that, where there these entities are functioning essentially as colonizers, and there's the one faction doesn't care if they destroy the planet or the people that are living there, like they're going to get theirs, and the other side is like, let's not destroy this planet, let's not abuse or tyrannize these native creatures, let's try to find a way where we can live and they can live and we can live together and perhaps even be mutually beneficial to each other. I don't know. They didn't get too deep into that, but Optimus Prime is always like, let's not abuse the humans. And Megatron could not have cared less.
No, yeah, he didn't care.
No. And I think that's, in some ways, I think that was kind of forward thinking.
No, and it was a great way to show, the ethics or the moral stance of your characters rather than telling, right?
Right, yeah, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. Why do you know? Because we say they are. No, this character actually has an ethical code that he will follow, even if it should disadvantage him.
Yep.
The other one
Exactly.
doesn't.
Yep. And that was usually, when Prime, quote, made a mistake or messed up, it was in following his ethics. It was in keeping to his moral code, which he could be hamstrung by, and oftentimes was both in the comic and in the cartoon. Megatron would come up with some sneaky ass bullshit to work around it.
In this very comic that I showed you, there's a sequence in it where Optimus Prime kind of loses his temper. And because he's being essentially taunted by Decepticons, and they're giving him a really he's trying to negotiate, and they're negotiating in bad faith. They're being Decepticons, and he kind of loses it.
Nice. And they suddenly adopt French accents and call him a smeller of other people's farts and tell him that his mother was a hamster.
They're kind of shocked the Decepticons are kind of shocked to see Optimus Prime actually get mad and break stuff. And later on, he feels bad because he breaks some things and almost hurts some people. And he has a moment of, damn it, I shouldn't have done that. And the Decepticons are like, well, I've never seen him do that before. I didn't know he could do that. So that's all some things that occur in that comic that I've kept around for some reason, that I bought when I was 12.
Probably worth some serious money by now.
It might be.
I
think I got on one of those. I think I got on one of those comic websites, and I think it's worth something.
I mean,
not
probably.
a lot. It's not in the best condition because I didn't. It's in a package now, but I didn't put it in one. And for it is not mint. It is less than mint, but the staples are still on. The pages are there, so I'll give it that. And there's some nice D&D ads in it.
Yes.
and an NES ad in the front there. It was before Super Nintendo.
Yep.
So
yeah, but I think that is the point, that Transformers' long-livedness, I think, is due to flawed heroes, and in some cases, especially in Prime's case, that flaw is that he keeps to his ethics. The ends do not justify the means.
Sure.
He has not perfect heroic purity, but
no,
he means well, he intends well, and he holds himself to the standards that he expects of others.
Yeah, he's kind of he's almost like a Star Trek captain in a sense.
Yeah, in many ways. Yeah,
he gives off a certain Jean-Luc Picard vibe, almost,
with an ion cannon that will turn into
a
truck.
Cannon.
That will turn into a semi truck and run your ass over.
But there's the same concept of ethical reserve.
Yes.
and I think that shows through, and I think that's what kind of made him an interesting character, even though he's a giant semi truck with a big gun. Like they could have just left him that
Oh, sure.
and just made them incredibly basic, but for some reason they chose to write it with a little bit of character
Nuance.
dynamics, a little bit of nuance, a little bit of character dynamics, and they got good voice actors.
Yep.
Like not just the same old like boring voice actors, but like all the actors had distinct voices.
Yeah.
It sounded like actual characters. Like we were talking about what Starscream sounds like, and we can hear it right now. Like we can hear that he's basically a minion. There's no
Yep.
need to do anything more with him, but they chose to, and they chose to give him that voice. They chose to breathe some life into it, which is, I think we're just kind of repeating what we've been saying. This is not where I
Really annoying.
expect my opinion about this to go, because I stopped caring about Transformers a really long time ago, and I've never seen any of the Michael Bay movies, and I was kind of annoyed that they existed.
Yeah, I saw the.
That was the
I
first
think
thing.
I saw the first two, and I was like, okay, I'm done. But like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It was like, why?
I
Why?
honestly I can't really recommend them. Like if you want to turn off your brain and stare at the spectacle for 2 hours, I mean, you can do that. But I mean, you could do that with a lot of movies. So
Yeah,
Like
it's
even
it's
Michael Bay doesn't get Optimus Prime wrong, and characterization is not that director's strong point.
well, it helps that he actually had Frank Welker do the voiceover. He's the original voice actor.
yes. They did. He did do that. He did do that. That was the
Yeah.
first. That was the first beginning of like reboot culture, and this is pretty early on. And I remember being annoyed by it. And
I was annoyed because Linkin Park is doing the music to Transformers. Jesus Christ, what, you couldn't find Stan Bush? It's not like the man has a busy dance card.
I agree with you.
Look, he does have the touch. He does have the power, all right?
Certainly, he has the
As-
time because he's not doing anything.
But no. I'd have to get every Dragon Ball Z AMV fucking soundtrack ever, Linkin Park. Thanks a fucking lot. Can't I just watch Goku fucking get his ass whooped to whatever that fucking song is? You know which one I'm talking about, Pod.
Oh,
we don't have to talk about Linkin Park.
yeah, let's
It's not
talk about them.
necessary.
They are a silly band. No.
Remember when Linkin Park was hard? Neither do we.
Neither do we. Yeah.
No one remembers that. But that goes right to it, because like they're doing this thing and that existed and that had a content wave and all this thing that existed. Instead of continuing it, we're just going to transform it into
I see what you
something
did there.
else. I didn't do it on purpose. I did it and then realized that I'd done it. I was like, and turn it into something that it's not, which is a big, dumb Hollywood schlock.
Yeah.
For what purpose? And yet it still made money. Made money.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I can say for the Michael Bay movies is that obviously the concepts behind the characters in the universe are still fresh, or they endure, or they're good enough on their own to draw an audience and to make money. It's not really how, if I were to go back and experience these stories again, it's not really how I would choose to. I'd probably just try to go back and watch like the first, Generation 1 Transformers through like the movie and then just be done with it.
Sure.
But
That's a complete arc. And yeah, and that gets right down to it. I mean, you tell a story and then the story's done, and then you really should just leave it alone.
Yeah, move on.
You really should just leave it alone.
Another story. Yeah, exactly.
I told my girls today that I haven't seen a Terminator movie since 1991, and my 10-year-old did not believe me. He was like, "What do you mean? Don't you have the DVDs in the basement, Dad?" I'm like, no, you're thinking of Predator, honey. She didn't actually know what Terminator was, but it shocked her that I stopped with a franchise, and I did. I've never seen any of the other Terminator movies because,
funny enough, the Terminator comics,
that story is done.
Yeah,
The Terminator comics. I can't remember who did it. It might have been Comico, the same people that were publishing Grendel. Now that I think about it, they had a Terminator comic. They had the license for a while, and all their stories took place in the future. Like they were all in like the dark future of Terminator, and they milked it for a lot of good stories. But honestly, there are a lot of good stories you can stay doing that didn't involve a bunch of time travel fuckery or none of that shit. It was just stories of the resistance in the future of Terminator trying to deal with post apocalypse.
There's all kinds of stories you can make if you care.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, look at how successful the recent Predator movie has been. Prey.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
sure.
The folks behind that film obviously care a lot about the material and yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what happens. You can create something compelling in an existing universe if you care about it and treat the framework with some kind of respect.
No, absolutely. Hey, a real quick question, Kieran. The guys that did the Terminator comics, they were the same ones that did the Predator ones for a while, right?
Don't know. I do not have that information.
Yeah, I seem to, because I remember seeing some of those Terminator comics back in like the early '90s. I want to say,
yeah,
and I feel like there were some there were a few where they had like one shots or like tidbits of like Predator, Terminator, and like one other one in there. And the art style was very similar, and I could have sworn it was the same.
I remember there was a Terminator RoboCop crossover.
I remember hearing about that. I never got to read it.
I got it. I had it. I don't think I've got it anymore, but like I did have it. I think the oldest thing I have now is issue 1 of Ghost Rider from the 90s.
Yippee-yi-yo. Yippee-yi-yay.
Still, I don't think Nick Cage did a bad job at that movie. But anyway.
I don't think he did either, but that movie was kind of nonsense.
I mean, it was a fun film. Like,
Yeah. It's like that's something you get mad about because it's just Ghost Rider.
It was also like pre-MCU, so it's like
none
of that ever happened. Yeah, so
Andrew,
dude, I'm not disrespecting Ghost Rider.
Andrew,
I'm just saying,
keep your sweet mouth shut. And if you can name the movie that came from,
I can't. I'm sorry.
The original Mad Max.
I thought I was going to make you mad.
And Michael got it in one. The original Mad Max, from Toe Cutter to Johnny the Boy. Johnny.
I've seen the original Mad Max.
Sweet mouth shut.
It's a good movie.
Yeah, no, it actually still holds up.
No, it's got a. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the villain, the Toe Cutter, was a famous Australian Shakespearean actor, so
he gives off a very Shakespearean vibe. He's delightfully sinister.
Well, it's the same actor that plays Immortan Joe in Fury Road.
Yep.
Which is also really good.
They cleaned up the they did a I guess a transfer or a they went back to like of the original Mad Max because I remember watching it like in when I was a kid, like in grade school or whatever.
Yeah.
And on VHS, and there were like just scenes where you couldn't see anything. You could hear people.
It was yellow as fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, where you could hear people talking, but you couldn't really see what was happening. And they actually went back and like retouched or remastered one of the versions of one of the original copies that they had, and it actually looks loads better. You can actually see everything happening.
One thing that does not hold up well in the Mad Max movie, the original one, is the soundtrack. That soundtrack is not the score, but the actual sung music in it.
I have no recollection of that.
Yeah, it is your brain protecting you, Andrew.
I guess. I don't remember anything. I don't remember finding anything objectionable. I mean, what is
the
it?
score was? I mean, the score does its job and it sets the mood for a lot of the scenes.
Well, for instance, when the goose is in that nightclub and the woman's singing.
Oh yeah, that bit's not great.
Not good at all.
Did you just call him the Goose?
Not good at all. Yeah, there's a character called the Goose, right?
Yeah, it's Goose, Goose or
Mad
the Goose
Max's
or something
friend
like
that's
that.
on the
Yeah,
motorcycle that
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
gets. Yeah, the Goose.
Yep.
Okay. That's weird.
Yeah, it's a weird like Top Gun parallel, right?
That's weird. I thought you were calling him the Goose out of a Top Gun parallel, but he was actually
Nope.
called that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I always thought was kind of weird. And what do you call it? Mad Max came out well before Top Gun,
Yeah,
so
well before.
I always wondered if what's his name?
Miller.
Or not Miller, the guy that directed Top Gun,
Oh, I don't know.
like lifted
Some
it or
dude.
whatever.
Some dude.
It
Some
was
guy.
Tony Scott. It was
Yeah,
Ridley
Tony
Scott's
Scott.
brother.
Huh. Oh, I see where all the
He
talent
also-
went in that family.
He also directed the sequel,
Tony Scott
which I
did?
have not seen. Yeah, I believe so.
I thought he committed suicide like over a decade ago.
Well, that would explain a lot.
Maybe... No, you're right. You're right. It was Joseph Kosinski. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, no worries.
Nah,
I wish that you weren't. I wish that you were both right. That in fact, it was Tony Scott brought back from the dead in some kind of evil necromantic Hollywood ritual.
You can
Now,
only rest
there's
in
a-
peace if you direct this film. Yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Mm.
You know, in the more interesting universe, Tony Scott was brought back for some sort of necromantic means.
Yeah, Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop, Days of Thunder, The Last Boy Scout.
Yep.
Which I recently saw.
That's a hilarious
True
movie.
Romance, Crimson Tide.
Yep.
Enemy of the State, Man on Fire, Deja Vu, Unstoppable. I don't know any of those other ones, but
Yeah.
some of those. Last Boy Scout is like an
Pretty good.
insane film.
Yes.
It's good. It's a good movie. I'd never actually seen it. And I just happened to watch it this summer. It was on. I was in a hotel room. It was on, and I was surprised at how much I did not hate it, even though it's an awfully grimy film. It just
Yeah.
seethes.
The grime is part of its charm.
It's so 1991.
Yep. Well, he also directed The Hunger, which, you know.
Oh God, don't remind me.
Oh. Didn't we talk about The Hunger?
We did.
In
We did.
our vampire comedy podcast? Did we decide that
We
The Hunger
did.
was a comedy? Is it? It's not supposed to be a comedy.
We decided it existed and it was inexplicable.
Yeah. It starts
little
out looking
David
like it has a
Bowie
plot,
in it?
and then it just kind of falls off.
It starts out
Okay.
with Bela Lugosi's dead, which I thought was going to be a good, but no.
All right.
No, it just
Okay.
declines from there. It declines from there. Oh God, it's just one really long '80s video.
Yeah.
Like an '80s video who's overstayed its welcome.
It is. I mean, it does kind of just become like it seems like a very long music video after a while. And, you know, the first half of it I feel like is great. And then it just kind of. So.
I mean, the video to Hungry Like the Wolf was better, I'm going to say.
I mean,
why did they ever use that
speaking
song
of
in a werewolf
speaking
flick,
of
man?
things that are still around from the 80s, I think Duran Duran put an album out like last year.
Oh, I think you're right.
I think they reunited.
Todd saw the bass player from Joy Division at the Fillmore the other night.
Oh, Peter Hook?
Yeah.
Hook.
No shit.
Yeah. Apparently it was a really good show. I wish I would have known about it. I'd have gone and see it.
I mean, New Order is still around. Like, they still,
Yeah.
I think they still do tours occasionally. Like, I would love to go
Is
see
Peter
them.
Hook still in New Order? Because I feel as though he's not.
I thought he was. I thought he rejoined them or does occasionally. I don't know. Like,
He's got his own thing going on too, but yeah, I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
really know.
they have interviewed him a bunch of times on like Sirius XM or whatever, talking about New Order. So I figure he's got to at least be on good terms with him.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. 2019, Duran Duran put a new album out
Oh, okay,
called Future
2019. All right.
Past. Future Past.
Future
Yeah.
Past.
And they're still touring.
Wow.
They were on Austin City Limits this past January.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I think certain things
And a
for the
limited
80s.
engagement with the butthole surfers. I kid.
Wow. certain things I think for the 80s just like hits a certain like mass market critical mass and then it never goes away.
Yeah.
That's why they keep making Terminator movies even though they don't make sense and aren't good.
Yeah.
You are correct.
That's why we have a Top
I
Gun
feel that the
sequel
winning
35 years after the fact.
Yeah, I don't know. I heard it was
even
actually good. I'm just gonna wait until it's on
I
basic
haven't
cable to
heard
watch it.
anyone say that it was bad. I've heard everyone who saw it say they liked it or that it was at least acceptable. Like no one's mad about it, which
oh, okay.
is
So I got a friend who is a Navy pilot, right?
sure.
That I talk to pretty regularly, and he enjoyed it, but he's like, it is in no way realistic at all. Because
It's
my
not like the
friend
original
is
was.
No, the
okay.
original
So
wasn't either.
my friend has both been in what is the actual Top Gun program and has been an instructor for that same program. He no longer flies. Now he's younger than me, and he no longer flies, which means Maverick's still flying. Not happening. Past a certain age, they don't let you do fighter missions anymore. You are not flying. Those things are expensive, and you ain't got the reflexes to keep up with them goddamn things no more.
Also, the older you
Nope.
get, the harder it is to take the G-force.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
a young
Maverick
man's game.
would not still be flying. He might be instructing, but he would not be pulling high G maneuvers or no shit like that. And no, not happening. Not happening. Most Navy pilots, if they end up being officers and they live long enough and don't get thrown out and whatever, end up flying a desk.
Sure.
Now, if someone out there knows better than me, please correct me. But I'm going to assume I'm right until presented evidence to the contrary. Funny enough, there was a Transformers to Top Gun crossover where they made a Transformer called Maverick.
Really?
They also
Right.
did a Transformers Ghostbusters crossover where the Ecto One turned into a Transformer.
Oh, really?
And they did a Back to the Future Transformers crossover. I'm not kidding you.
I didn't know any of
Now
this.
Ghostbusters is the opposite of what we've been talking about.
It is.
Right, because Transformers was like there's comic book, there's TV show, there's toy line, there's eventually going to be a movie, and all these things are coordinating, working together, and we're going to take this very basic concept, we're going to give it a little kick of depth, and we're going to hope these kids have fun with it, which we did. Ghostbusters was this like horror comedy film that was a surprise hit in 1984, and they keep trying to milk it.
Yep.
And they're milking it wrong.
The cartoon was good though.
The
original cartoon
was it though? Like,
dude, the amount of references that they made to H.P. Lovecraft and integration of that into the stories, no, it was pretty good.
I mean,
I'd have to go back and watch it. It's been ages since I've seen it.
I watched it when I was a kid. It was kind of like I always thought it was kind of dumb, not He-Man dumb, because there were like characters, even though they was just built off the same old characters, they didn't really look like them.
Yeah, they did not.
That was kind of a stumbling block for me. It's like there's nobody who looked less like Bill Murray than the Venkman character from the Ghostbusters cartoon.
One also like Egon was blonde and like Harold Ramis was had black hair, so yeah, there was all of that.
Yeah.
Likeness
Janine
rights.
almost looked like actual Janine. Almost. They gave her a
the only
weird punk haircut, but otherwise pretty close. But yeah, and they were just doing that to build a toy line off of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really. They's like, here's the thing, let's build a toy line out of this. Let's not. And it wasn't until they had the cartoon that there was a toy line.
Yeah, well, the
Like they
cartoon
had
came
this.
years after the film too.
Yeah, they had this logo, and everybody wanted a Ghostbusters T-shirt in the Christmas of 1984. I know I did because I got one.
Nice.
All three of my brothers and sisters, we all got one, and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. And there's like, there's a market here. Let's build the market. And then they made a sequel, which wasn't good, and
It wasn't.
they just keep doing it.
Yep.
And they need to stop.
I haven't seen the newest one, but
it's fan service.
Nah.
It's nothing. It's an apology for the 2016 version.
It's a shame.
It's well, they need to just stop doing it because there's nothing left to do with this. You know,
I mean, there is just not what they're doing with it.
They're trying to like recreate and like, you know, make the fans feel happy instead of telling a story that's compelling, which would make people happy.
Well, yeah, and I mean that was some of the success of the original one, right? I mean, it was you had a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. You know,
it was a funny film, but had like an actual like the horror elements were played very straight, and it's a crowd pleasing kind of a film.
No, absolutely. And like you had Sigourney Weaver, who had just come off of doing both Alien and Aliens, because I believe Aliens was before.
I think Aliens was like 86 or 87.
Was it? Okay, all right.
I think I'm going to double check that.
Yeah, don't remember right now.
Check that.
But she had gotten established with Alien, and she'd been in a couple of other films.
Yeah, the second film was 1986.
Okay,
so
all right.
2 years after Ghostbusters. But the first film was from 79, so you're right on that score.
Yeah,
I'm being pedantic, but you're actually right.
Yeah, I'm being shallow, so we got it down.
we did the thing. We did the thing.
We did do the thing.
So yeah, I think we've beaten this thing to death.
Yeah.
I think
then maybe this is a part of the podcast where maybe we pimp our shit, i.e., what brings us together to work on these things anyway.
That's
Unnamed Journal.
That's one way of putting it. Yes, there's a new issue of UJ out with some very, very fun stuff in it. Mike started a new serial, a new novel.
New story, yep. New novel, yep.
New story.
New serial.
It's going to take a little while, but hopefully everybody likes it.
Also, if Patrick hasn't announced it, Andrew hasn't announced this before, Drunk Vampire Hunter, the collected series is out. I picked up a copy of it.
Yes.
Cool beans. Cool beans. I was just thinking about that. Go ahead.
My wife is reading it. She enjoys it greatly. I enjoyed it.
Awesome.
Great stories. They're really fantastic.
I was thinking about that today as I was driving home from work. I was thinking about how, like, where did this guy come from? And he's like a little bit Vlad Taltosh. Some of the tone I think is definitely Stephen Brust, and he's a little bit Continental Op, which is
a lot Ernest Hemingway.
Maybe
the alcoholism part.
Well, that part, yeah. But yeah, he's kind of all those things because he's kind of the man with no name. Because I just call him Drunk Vampire Hunter, and he's not going to give his name because Dashiell Hammett's Continental Op never does either. He's just the Continental Op, and he was in that novel Red Harvest, which has the guy goes to the town controlled by the competing factions and knocks everything to hell, which is kind of like Yojimbo / Fistful of Dollars, that whole plot template, and he runs. There isn't a Drunk Vampire Hunter story in this new issue of UJ, but I've thought about writing a new one.
You should.
Okay, I will. I will do that. And instead, I've got another thing going. It's kind of a similar tone, except it's like a medieval mystery thing that I've got going, which is something I found and dusted off and forgot how much I liked it, and just need to finish it.
Those done well can be very entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, a good mystery is great to
A
do,
medieval
and
mystery is better. Like I had really enjoyed the Brother Cadfell series when they had that on PBS with Derek Jacobi as the eponymous Brother
yes,
Cadfell.
Brother Cadfile stories were great. Um, yeah, the unexpected kind of detective is always the most interesting kind of detective, and I think I may have had that in mind when I started writing "Don't Touch the Dead," which is the name
Mm.
of the little novelette that I've started that's in this new issue. And what else? What else is in the issue? I just looked at it. It just arrived in the mail from Amazon because it's on paperback.
Woo-hoo!
Get it? It looks really good on
Does it? Yeah,
paperback.
it does
It
look
really
good.
shows off Kieran's artwork in a nice way. Like I always just asked for this thing. Like, what about a thing that looks like this, Kieran? And in record time, you give me that thing, which is always a pleasant surprise, even though I asked for it.
Well,
So
you give me things in a very good. The language you give me is very visual, or at least one that I conceive as visual.
uh
So
huh,
generally, when you say, "Hey, I want the cover to have this and this on it," I'm like, "Okay, I see how that works, and I see how I can make that work." And I just go, "Oh, here you go." You know, it's not a. Usually, what I do is when I'm doing my art is I just piece it together in my head before I even touch my computer. Like I've got an idea in
sure.
my head what I want it to be. Um,
Hmm.
I actually, no one will ever get to see this, but my brother, who's over in Jordan, said, "Hey, can you redo this unit patch for my unit for the Air National Guard?" And I looked at it. I'm like, he said, "I need to be changed to this, this, and this." I'm like, "Okay, do you want this? You can actually use this because the one you gave me is tiny as fuck, and you'll never be able to use it for anything except the website." He said, "If you could," I said, "Yeah, here you go. It's vector. Now you can blow up the size of God's ass, and it'll look great." So you know. But not a lot of people give me good. Like I've dealt with a lot of people that tell me they want this, this, and this, and the visual language is of something that can't work because they're asking for conflicting themes and concepts, or they want things that don't mix together at all.
Yeah,
And visually, like they're words, but none of these words go together.
yeah. The Thomas Hobbes. You're just making sounds.
Yeah,
Yep.
You're not saying words.
yeah,
And your work's gotten very textured, especially this volume. Like
yeah.
that's something I've seen a lot of with the last few several issues, starting with Hipster Potter. You've really like just like pumped up the
I like,
texturing,
yeah,
and it
I like to
looks
try to make it.
cool.
I've been trying to go towards a more visually complex without being busy. Like
Yes.
Yeah, no, I
like
can
you
see
can take a
that.
look at one of my covers, like small on the screen, and you won't get all the texture, but it still looks interesting. And then when you see it full size, you see things you didn't see before. You know, the idea is
Hmm.
to have it in the microcosm, it draws your attention, and then in the macrocosm, you see more than you did before. Um, and that's what I've been trying to operate on. Is just do things in a way that don't necessarily tell a story, but that give you a lot to like hook onto.
Right on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes to
Yeah.
see, okay, how much can I give Andrew exactly what he asked for, but not at all what he was expecting?
And at this point, I think that that's kind of what I hope for. Because I can ask to have a very clear idea of what it would look like if I made it, but I know when I give it to you, it's going to become something that you've created, and that's a cool thing to give somebody an idea and have it turn into something that you absolutely did not expect. I always like seeing what the covers are going to look like. So this is a particularly good cover. So I would advise everyone to go out and get themselves a copy of the latest issue of UJ. And how would you go about doing that?
I believe you can go to Amazon.com.
Yep. Amazon.com.
You can go to Amazon.com and just look up Unnamed Journal, and we can pop up that way. Or you can hit up our Gumroad, which is
Yep.
gumroad.com/shallow pedantic, and you can get ebook versions of the latest issue. You can get a PDF or an EPUB. Actually, you get both if you buy it off the Gumroad. You
Gumroad.
get
Yep.
both. You
And
get
if
both
you want to
editions.
see what's going on in the universe of our literature happenings, check out Content Blues.
Yes.
Oh, right. Also, subscribe to the Patreon, and you get all the things. Patreon.com/shallowpedantic. I think we've hit everything, right, boys?
Yeah, no, I think that's everything.
I believe we poured ourselves sufficiently.
Yeah, that's just sufficiently. You don't want to do more than that.
Yep.
So this has been Shallow and Pedantic, episode 22, all about the Transformers, who are more than meets the eye. I'm Andrew.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Kieran.
Thank you all for stopping by.